If you thought I was wrong about this, then you're definitely gonna think I'm wrong about this. Welcome. I'm Emma, but here you can call me closed captions. This isn't just another horror channel, it's where I give my 2 cents on what films are really saying about our fears, society, and just the human condition itself. It's smart, it's spooky, and sometimes it's a little unhinged. So, if you're ready to dive into the shadows with me, hit subscribe and the like button, and let's descend together. So I'm so glad to have y'all back. This is part 2 of my analysis of Sinister. I really hope you enjoyed the first part. Due to the script being so jam-packed, I thought it'd be better to break it up into 2 parts, just so it's a little easier to digest all these random ass facts I'm throwing at you. So just to recap, in part 1, we discussed the backgrounds of Peter Pan and Bagul, the core similarities, and the tactics they use to lure children into their realm. Here in part 2, we're going to be diving into how Sinister's story structure is a tragedy and how Ellison is subject to Bagul's luring as well. So let's get into it. So to support my argument, I'm going to be using this detailed version of Freitag's tragedy pyramid. We're going to break down the movie into each segment and then discuss the effectiveness of the overall story. I will be highlighting moments that show Ellison's Neverland journey that we discussed in part 1. So make sure you're caught up on that before diving into this video, as I will be referring to it heavily. Also, we're going to be breaking down Sinister as almost like a scene by scene. So if you have not seen the movie, please go watch it. You can watch it for free. I believe it's on Plex. I'll link it down in the bio. Or if you haven't seen it and you just want to hear me rant about it, that's cool. So let's go ahead and jump into the start of our story structure. So we're first going to start at exposition. So exposition is part of the introduction, right? So the intro can be broken down into 2 different parts: exposition and your inciting action. So exposition aims to set the mood, time, place, and just reveal background information. It's going to be heavy on telling, not showing.
Let me tell you something!
So in the first scene, we meet the Oswalds, who are moving into a new home. Ellison the father, Tracy the mom, Trevor the son, and Ashley the daughter. Early dialogue shows that Ashley is resisting the move, hinting at family strain and Ellison's career-first mindset. When the local sheriff unexpectedly shows up to welcome the family, Tracy's unease in dealing with the situation foreshadows this ongoing conflict over Ellison's writing and just the impact it has on the family and their way of life. So Ellison clashes with the local sheriff, who criticizes his work as harmful and recalls his controversial success with Kentucky Blood. Their exchange highlights Ellison's fading reputation and just this obsession with chasing past glory. Discussion of the home's prior murders and the missing girl sets the mystery into motion, while the sheriff's warning foreshadows a grim truth. This scene also plants Ellison's tragic flaw: ambition clouding judgment. So it's a lot of characterization that happens within the first 6 minutes of the film, but it does establish all the exposition info we need to just jump right into the story, which leads to the inciting incident, which is when Ellison finds the films in the attic. It's pretty, cut and dry. This is the moment that our tragedy story gets rolling and leads us into our rising action. So rising action is loosely defined as an event or portion of the story where the hero is relatively in control of the situation, and decisions made directly by the hero will eventually lead to misery. So buckle in, because we are about to be here for a minute, as a majority of the story does fall here. So once Ellison starts watching the films, he realizes it's not just one family murdered, it's 5. Pool party, barbecue, lawn work, sleepy time, and family hanging out. So within the pool party film, Ellison gets his first glimpse of Bagul, and in sleepy time, Ellison discovers Bagul's sigil and that all the murders are similar in nature. You have a dead family, a missing child, somebody's recording it, and there's a mysterious symbol. So for Ellison's Neverland journey, this would signify Bagul watching over Ellison. So after a power outage suggests someone might be in the house, Ellison investigates and discovers the film box lid marked with disturbing doodles of each murder and a mysterious figure called Mr. Boogie. This has Ellison pull out his phone to record the evidence that he finds. However, an unexpected fall from the attic alerts Deputy So-and-so to check in on the family. After confirming they're safe, he offers assistance to Ellison with police records for his research. Ellison quickly requests files on the sleepy time and the barbecue murders, pushing the investigation even further. So Deputy's partnership further demonstrates how the tragic flaw, ambition, and pride is Ellison's main driver, as he's so reluctant to let him know any major details that he's found so far. When looking at Ellison's Netherland journey, this would also be like luring out of the physical realm, as it gives him enough information to blur the lines between reality and Bagul's realm, giving Bagul the power to exist in his mind that strengthens that bond. So the next day, as Ellison is reviewing his footage frame by frame, he realizes that he was pulled through the attic floor by children's hands. Studying the drawings, he begins searching the films for Bagul, whose presence is linked to each murder. Deputy So-and-so interrupts with updates on the two cases, providing Ellison with new details. While Ellison is distracted on the phone, Bagul briefly looks at Ellison from the computer screen, reinforcing this idea that he's always watching. In addition to the luring in this Netherland journey, this would also signify Ellison's physical touch, if you would. So from this point on, we see Ellison's mental health start to deteriorate. I personally believe that Bagul is feeding on Ellison's anxiousness and fear from the case, or just the general negativity from Ellison's emotional/mental state. So this is going to be a wild concept, but think about it like this. So if Ashley's the meal, Ellison's the snack.
Can I have a snack?
No.
So up to this point, we know that Bagul goes after children exclusively. Technically, Sinister 2 would challenge that, but we're just going to leave it there, because if you know, go see the movie. If Bagul can't physically get Ellison into his realm, he's going to use this psychological torment and fear to keep Ellison as a pawn in his game, right? I don't know. Makes sense to me. So when Deputy delivers these case files, he suggests that Ellison contact Professor Jonas, an expert in ritualistic murders. Jonas explains that the strange sigil is tied to Bagul, a pagan deity known as the Eater of Children, and provides Ellison with critical background on his mythology. So many nights, Bagul stirs up strange occurrences that just keeps Ellison on edge. The most notable night is when he wakes up at 3:23 a.m. to find the films playing on their own. Strange creaks echo throughout the house as the audience sees dead children moving around, unsettling Ellison, though he never spots them directly. So shaken, he later admits to the deputy that he felt a threatening presence in the home. So looking at the Neverland journey, this demonstrates Ellison's ability to move between both realms, like we've seen with the kids before. I think this is just another example of Bagul demonstrating his power and honestly just his sick humor of fucking with Ellison. And I do want to mention, oddly specific times, such as the 3:23 a.m., it can symbolize fated moments, like it's a predestined thing rather than just a coincidence. I know, I found it really interesting. After one of my watch throughs, I did some research on it, and it just feels like that is very, even though it's such a minor detail, it really plays into the whole tragedy, story line piece thing. Yes. After that night, this is when Ashley paints Stephanie, the missing girl, in the hallway, and this revelation spearheads the family tension entirely. Now on to the climax.
Hey, if that's what you want to think, it's fine. Not a problem. Magnum, come back, please.
So the climax has a very broad definition. It's where the rising action and the falling action meet.
You cannot be for real. Oh my God, you for real.
Some real brainiac shit, huh? So I do want to preface this here. So I would say a majority of my watch throughs, I would have argued that the climax of the story is when Deputy So-and-so calls Ellison to let him know that he has put him and his family in the line of these murders, right? However, after watching the movie through the lens that it's a tragedy, I have recounted that stance, and I believe it's this fight between Tracy and Ellison, which obviously we're going to dig into here. But there's a lot to dissect in this scene, especially as we are looking at it from a tragedy. Oh my god, there's so many layers here. Oh my god, do I need to insert the clip?
They have layers.
Yeah. There's fucking layers, okay?
Ogres are like onions. End of story. Bye-bye. See you later.
Sometimes I wish I could just watch a movie and be a normal ass person, but here we are. So there's a lot to dissect in this scene. Yes, Tracy and Ellison are arguing about opposing views on the seriousness of Ashley's behavior, as well as Ellison not telling Tracy about the details about the home, aka a family was murdered in the backyard before moving in. However, my point lays that this movie is a tragedy, right? So let's look at these characters from that lens. So we have Ellison, right? Ellison is our tragic hero. Tragic hero is defined as a character who is destined for suffering because of a combination of fate, personal choice, and a critical flaw in their character. This critical flaw is known as the humanitera. When editing, I realized I mispronounced this word entirely. It's humarta or humarsha. I was using a completely different word that is relatively similar, but not the same as tragic flaw. So Ellison's humanitera is the ambition to find the truth in success. I do want to run through a short list of key characteristics that define a tragic hero, as they are embodied in Ellison, and just solidifies the argument that he is a tragic hero. So the first one is they have a noble status or great potential. So often a person of high social rank, power, or moral status, and their position makes the fate feel more dramatic or consequential, right? He is seen as like a man of the people, as he is a true crime author who at one point was able to unearth new evidence and, brought closure to the families, was able to let an innocent person walk free, and all the great noble things that came with that, right? So clearly his head and heart are in the right place. It's just a little bit too stubborn with it, right? As an audience, especially with that exposition that we get at the beginning, where we start off rooting for him, as he is coming from a place of, he wants the success to put his family in a better position. Going on to the second one, which is the humanitera, the tragic flaw, a deep personal flaw that contributes directly to their downfall. So it's not always evil, but it is a trait that becomes destructive when under pressure. Jealousy, naivety. I don't know if that's how you pronounce that, but pride, honestly, like a vengeance, anything of that nature. And we see this as Ellison's mental health starts to deteriorate because he will not let the case be. Like, he will not put it down. He's determined to see it through no matter what those lengths look like, which ultimately proves fatal for them. The third point is going to be the hubris, so excessive pride or defiancy. So many tragic heroes challenge fate, the gods, moral law, believing that they can overcome these limits, which ultimately seals their fate. So this is where we really start kind of seeing Bagul's impact on the overall storyline. Ellison is hellbent on finding this serial murderer who he believes is Bagul, but he doesn't ever really consider Bagul to be a paranormal presence, if you would. That's probably not the best way to describe him, but y'all get the fucking gist here, okay? He is continuously pressing to find more answers of these cases and to be able to shed some light and honestly just kind of build a higher reputation for himself, trying to overcome these limits. So this overly ambitious trait that Ellison has keeps him engaged and ultimately aligned with Bagul, if you want to look back at that Netherland journey of his, and it keeps him attuned, therefore it keeps him vulnerable to Bagul's influence that really sets everything into play, as Ellison believes that he can completely figure everything out. Moving into the fourth point, which is free will and that fate interplay, the downfall feels inevitable because it's shaped by both forces outside of their control, so either a destiny, a prophecy, or societal pressures, and their own decisions. So again, this is where we see Bagul's entanglement, I don't know, one of those words. But Bagul definitely has some level of influence on how things kind of shape up, right? And so between Bagul shaping that and Ellison staying attuned to what Bagul's doing and how he's manifesting in his realm, definitely just goes to show that does to a point become inevitable. So the fifth one, which I don't really know how to pronounce this word, it starts with a P for words, but it's the reversal of fortune, right? So a sudden change from success or stability to ruin, often linked directly to their actions. So this specifically spearheaded when Ashley was painting Stephanie in the previous scene. So this really rocks the stability of the family, and Ellison thinking that this murder and these bad things are separate from his family, but they're not. For whatever reason, they're now come together, and Ellison has this realization of like, oh shit, this may be bigger than him, which is, again, kind of gets that ball rolling on this catastrophic end that the family ends up facing. So a tragic story typically goes as a rise to greatness, you have a turning point, and then the inevitable fall, right? So I think going through this story, we pick up right in the middle point at the turning point, because throughout the film, there's just this looming shadow of success that once was Kentucky Blood. Ellison's determined to get back to that high point of success, which comes with fame, money, notoriety, which has been his main driving factors up until this point. So Tracy is the intuitive figure. So these types of characters are defined as those who perceive the coming disaster. This insight may be from supernatural means, such as prophecy, vision, dream, a heightened emotional perception, or just deep wisdom about human nature. Her critical role is to signal to the audience that the tragedy is already in motion, and any warnings given to the hero, Ellison, is ignored.
It's not clocking to that I'm standing on business, is it?
So she acts as a moral or emotional compass for Ellison, as she deeply feels the implications of Trevor's crazy night terrors, Ashley's abnormal behavior, and Ellison's growing distress while researching the case. Ultimately, these warnings prove to be right after the damage has been done, keeping that tragic fate intact. Now that we covered these characters from that tragic lens, let's step back into the actual scene. So the fight marks the true climax of the movie, where Ellison's tragic flaw finally tears the family apart. Tracy confronts him with the emotional weight of his choices, pointing out the risk that he placed on their safety, whereas Ellison downplays the danger and defends his actions as necessary for financial security. He argues that his books and career are his legacy. Tracy counters that their children are his real legacy, ending the argument with finality. This eruption has been building throughout the rising action, with Tracy's earlier pleads for him to stop, such as passive-aggressive comments at dinner, setting the boundary of leaving if the book fails, and just her overall concern for Trevor. That all accumulates here. Okay, so into our falling action we go. This stage follows the climax, where the consequences of the protagonist's choice, often shaped by the tragic flaw, is unraveled. It shows the chain of events that led towards inevitable disaster, driving the story towards its catastrophic resolution. So let me tell you, if you questioned if the fight was the climax, how do you explain this next scene? How do you fucking do it? Because the next scene opens as the Super 8 films Ellison while he's sleeping, which further expresses this tragic fate that's ensuing. Ellison wakes up to the sound of the Super 8 film playing in his head, which prompts him to check the study to make sure that the films are still out of the reach of the kids. Once finding that the Super 8 films are missing, we see the attic ladder is down, and he makes his way to investigate. Once he's up there, he sees the 5 dead kids watching one of the films, and Ghoul pops up and scares the shit out of Ellison, which proves to be effective. Okay, so looking at the Netherland journey, right? This would be Ellison's first glimpse into, or did I say Netherland? Y'all, it's Netherworld. Fuck, I knew I was gonna fuck this up. Run it back. I feel like I need a participation award. So this would be Ellison's first glimpse into the Netherworld in his Netherworld journey. So, side note, so we get this strong imagery of Jacob's ladder, which is a biblical reference to a vision Jacob saw of a stairway connecting heaven and earth. With that in mind, I have 3 conclusions, okay? Number 1, this ladder is obviously connecting Bagul's realm and reality, hence why Ellison's able to peek into Netherland. However, that means that the concept of heaven would be Bagul's realm, and then the concept of earth would obviously be Ellison's world, or just reality in general. So that's already an inference that Bagul is acting as a god. So that's going to lead into my second conclusion. If Bagul is the god, and the dead children are his angels carrying out his activities in the world, which, if you watched my last video, you would know that this would solidify my theory on the dead kids being an extension of Bagul and luring the kids in and keeping them attuned to the film that they end up going on to make. So the third conclusion that I came to is that plans will continue to carry on. So one way to interpret the Jacob's Ladder story, God's ongoing work in the world is consistently happening, and that human failure doesn't derail the divine will. So if we apply that to Bagul's scenario, it's saying that his operations are consistently being carried out. So it does play into that tragic element of it's inevitable. No matter what you choose, because there is this influence of God being Bagul, right? Essentially always going to meet the same fate. It's just kind of the reinforcement of these tragic elements that we've been discussing. So after playing fuck around and find out with Bagul, Ellison finally gives in and moves his family back to their original home. First, he burns the Super 8 films and declares that there will be no book. Ellison is explaining this to Tracy and the sheriff, who are the wise figures of the story. This illuminates the tragic element of Anorosis. And Anorosis, and it sounds like a dinosaur. Or it sounds like some kind of like medical condition, which is the point of realization about either the flaw or the situation. As the Oswalds settle into the old house, the audience is given a false sense of hope that life will return back to normal for the family and they may finally be safe. So Ellison meets Professor Jonas one last time, learning that Bagul travels through media to possess children and drag them into his netherworld. Declaring that he's done with the book, Ellison resumes unpacking, only to discover the Super 8 box with the film, camera, and a envelope labeled extended cuts in the attic. As he pieces together the new footage, Deputy So-and-so calls to reveal that every murdered family has once lived in the house of the previous victims, starting with the pool party murders. The deputy warns him, you put yourself in the line, setting the tone for the final 3 scenes. These new clips show that the missing children disappearing after looking into the camera and putting their finger over their mouth with their heads slightly pointed down. So looking at Ellison's netherworld journey, this would be the second peek into netherworld, as he now has the full picture, which he can only know because he's gonna die. It's honestly another fuck you play from Bagul, and it just shows how committed Bagul is to mentally fucking with Ellison, which again, I feel like it's such an extra step. So I can't tell if this man is just bored as hell, or if again, like this is some kind of like feeding process for him. Could be like playing with your food, you know?
So good and tasty.
So Ellison grows woozy after realizing the coffee Ashley brought him is growing. It's not growing. It's glowing green, and he collapses. When he comes to, his hands, feet, and mouth are all bound with duct tape as Ashley sets up the Super 8 film in front of him. She then carries out the ritual, dismembering Ellison and the rest of the family. So this is the catastrophia, the inevitable, devastating conclusion of the tragedy. 2 additional tragedy traits that don't have like any visual depiction in the movie that I still think is relevant to at least the writing of the story. Another characteristic is the catharsis in the audience. So this is like their inevitable fall provokes pity because they had admirable qualities and because their flaws and fate felt human and relatable. Ellison's desires weren't outrageous, nor were they too big for life. It did feel like something that anybody in the audience could relate to. Everyone to one degree or another can understand what he wants, and why he wants it. Ellison embodies this relentlessness to find truth and has nearly sacrificed everything to find answers for this murdered family, as well as families before. So we go in, especially with the exposition info that we're given, we expect some kind of success or some kind of high that he gets from ultimately bring truth to a situation that they didn't think was solvable. So the other quality here is the death or irreversible loss. So most tragic heroes face death, exile, or destruction of what they most valued, leaving a lasting sense of waste or inevitability. So this loss weighs on us in a different way, because Ellison gets so far into finding this evidence, being able to find the connection between the families and understand like ritualistic craziness that the police had never found. And so we are rooting for him, and we're hoping with this evidence that it doesn't just get swept under the rug and no one finds out about it. And, you know, we really were hoping that he would find the way to defeat him. What's really cool about Sinister 2 is that they are able to pick up on that loss feeling of like, oh fuck, like what are we supposed to do with all this evidence? Final thoughts. I just love this movie. I don't know, go out and watch it. Even after watching it as many times as I've had, I swear every time I watch it, I find something new. It's one of those ones that has multiple layers to them. Let me tell you, Amazon Prime free TV had the 2003 Peter Pan on there, so, you know, I had to watch it in light of making this little series. And I will say, like, I think that movie has a lot of shit going on it, and it's not like paranormal spooky shit. I will say there is a lot of one-liners that Peter Pan throws out that you're like, what do you mean you're not alive? What do you mean?
What do you mean? What do you mean?
Like, he talks about himself in like the past tense a lot, and it definitely insinuates that the children at some point of time were fucking dead. So that was but there's some very interesting themes in that I think are worth discovering. It's not spooky scaries, but there's a lot to dissect there that I don't think the original Peter Pan book, which honestly I'll probably end up going out and reading to find those themes. Please go out and watch these movies if you have not already. If you have watched it, watch it through the lens of a tragedy. I'm telling you, you'll have a newfound appreciation. I hope y'all learned a little bit of something. Hopefully it didn't feel too much like a high school English lesson of me regurgitating random shit. What do y'all want to talk about next? I have a few things kind of lined up. I haven't really decided if I want to take on my ideas of deep diving into specific movies, or if I want to talk about just elements and topics and things that we see come up over, you know, multiple movies and things of that nature. So any topics, any elements, any movies specifically you would love to hear about, please leave it in the comments below. Like I said, I didn't realize how much time goes into these deep dive videos, so I haven't been able to pump out as much content as I wanted to, so I'm still kind of figuring that out. And I will be linking Sinister though. Sinister 2 you do have to purchase, you have to rent it. However, Tubi and I believe it's Plexus. It's Plex. Plex. You can watch them for free down below. I'm pretty sure there's ads in it, but well, thank y'all so much for watching the video. I deeply appreciate the time that y'all taken to check it out and hopefully expand your knowledge. Like I said, leave your comments down below. I want to know what y'all think. I feel like it's been a long time coming to actually share these ideas with more than just my small circle of friends. And any recommendations or anything that y'all see out online, or maybe when you're watching a movie, I want to know the topics that come up or things that interest you. And as always, hit subscribe and the like button. It's 2 really small steps that you can take that help out the channel a lot. So yeah, so I will see you next time, and I'll have fun. How do I end this? Stay fucking spooky. I don't know.